Love, they say, is a wonderful feeling. When embarking on a new relationship, many find themselves reflecting on the possibility of a lifelong commitment. However, if that thought doesn't resonate, it is often wiser to end things before they spiral further. In a tragic twist, Valerie Reyes found herself in a relationship that would cost her everything. Disturbingly, Valerie would later predict her own demise, a chilling premonition that would haunt those who knew her. Born on April 1, 1994, in New Rochelle, New York, Valerie Reyes was the cherished daughter of Sal and Norma. As the middle child among her siblings, she shared a particularly close bond with her mother, who fostered Valerie's deep passion for the arts. Her creative spirit illuminated every facet of her life. Valerie was known for her gentle heart and selfless nature, tirelessly striving to achieve her goals. From an early age, she was deeply rooted in family values. Books were her escape, and rather than attending wild parties, Valerie preferred the comfort of close friends and family. After graduating high school in 2012, she pursued her studies at New Rochelle College, where she blossomed further. Making new friends along the way, acquaintances described her as a beacon of happiness, love, and kindness. The Reyes family was tightly knit, dedicating Sundays as their special family day. Weekends were a source of joy for Valerie, who cherished the moments spent with her family, playing board games, strolling through local parks, or enjoying pastries at their favorite cafe. With her younger brothers, she transformed into a playful, carefree spirit. Even as she matured, she retained that whimsical charm around them, embodying laughter and mischief. Outside family time, she worked at a bookstore in Eastchester, a role that allowed her to immerse herself in literature. Valerie relished the chance to recommend books, sharing her insights on a myriad of genres. Whether in a cafe or at home, she was almost always found with a book in hand. Her love for the arts extended beyond reading. She found joy in singing, hiking, and the beauty of nature. Yet, it was her passion for creative expression that truly defined her. Valerie often created portraits for friends and classmates. Inspired by her older brother, who was a tattoo artist, she dreamed of crafting her own unique designs and opening a tattoo parlor of her own, an ambition she diligently pursued. Initially, she allowed her brother to practice tattooing on her, but she soon discovered her own love for the craft. An artist at heart, Valerie radiated positivity, although she occasionally faced struggles with anxiety and depression. Creativity became her refuge, a means of coping with her inner turmoil. In January 2018, Valerie crossed paths with Javier Enrico Duchilo Rojas on a dating website. Their whirlwind romance lasted only 3 months, ending in April 2018. It was clear to Valerie that Javier was more invested in the relationship than she was. Confiding in her friends, she expressed her doubts about their future together. The tension between them escalated, leading her to make the difficult decision to end things. Javier, however, was not ready to accept the breakup. He relentlessly called and messaged her, crafting excuses to maintain contact, unable to let go of the relationship that Valerie had deemed over. In September 2018, just months after their split, the situation would take a darker turn. In an unexpected twist, Javier Enrico Duchilo Rojas reached out to Valerie Reyes, claiming he wished to reimburse her for money he had allegedly taken from her debit card. He insisted that the charge was a mistake, a result of his accidental use of her card information for an online purchase. How Javier had managed to access her card details remained shrouded in mystery. It was unclear whether Valerie had willingly shared her card information or if remnants of their past relationship had left traces on a shared computer. Frustrated with Javier's incessant attempts to communicate, Valerie resolved to have her friend handle the financial matter. She aimed to cut off any unnecessary opportunities for her ex-boyfriend to re-enter her life. Following this incident, a calm seemed to settle over Javier, as if he finally grasped the finality of their breakup. For months, silence enveloped their fractured relationship. As time passed, Valerie turned 24, residing alone in a rented basement apartment in New Rochelle. The solitude, combined with her past psychological struggles, weighed heavily on her. Panic attacks and anxiety, once manageable, began to resurface with a vengeance. Though Valerie had lived independently for some time, her recent sense of isolation grew more acute. The absence of loved ones intensified her anxiety. Just the day before, she had enjoyed a blissful Sunday with her family, seemingly without a care in the world. Yet, beneath this facade of normalcy, turmoil brewed. On Monday, January 28, 2019, Valerie called her mother in a state of panic, conveying a chilling premonition that her life was in imminent danger, as if she sensed her own mortality. What must have raced through Norma's mind upon hearing such a distressing confession from her daughter is unfathomable. Valerie's voice trembled with fear, as though she were tapping into a dark intuition about her fate. This drastic shift in her emotional state was no mere coincidence. Norma, acutely aware that just 5 days prior, Valerie had endured yet another painful breakup, felt a wave of maternal concern wash over her. Striving to comfort her daughter, she urged Valerie to come home if the loneliness felt overwhelming. However, Valerie, overwhelmed and unable to articulate her feelings, abruptly ended the call, leaving Norma with a heavy heart. Sensing her daughter's need for space, Norma resolved to let her rest, hoping the morning would bring clarity. They had planned to meet the following day for a shopping trip, and Norma wished Valerie a good night, offering a few encouraging words before moving on with her day, pushing the troubling conversation to the back of her mind. Later that evening, Valerie reached out to her mother with a goodnight message, attempting to reassure her that she was feeling better. In addition to her mother, she confided in her best friend, Jeffrey Anderson, with whom she had shared nearly a decade of friendship. In sharing her worries with Jeffrey, a semblance of relief washed over her. After their heartfelt conversation, Valerie sensed a boost in her spirits. As the night deepened and work awaited her in the morning, she succumbed to sleep. On Tuesday, January 29th, Norma anticipated their afternoon meeting with eagerness. However, as the hours passed, Valerie did not respond to calls or texts. Though concern gnawed at her, Norma refrained from bombarding her daughter with messages, trusting that Valerie would reach out once she regained her composure. Norma, a concerned mother, initially brushed off her daughter's absence, believing that Valerie had simply succumbed to exhaustion and turned off her phone to escape the world for a while. Little did she know that Valerie had not reported for work, a glaring deviation from her usual routine. As Tuesday dragged on without a word from Valerie, her silence deepened the anxiety among her friends and family. By Wednesday, Valerie had vanished without a trace, missing yet another shift at the bookstore. This behavior was utterly out of character for her. Concern mounted as the bookstore management attempted to reach Valerie with no success. That evening, Norma recalled the troubling anxiety that had plagued her daughter the night before. A creeping suspicion began to take hold. Something was terribly wrong. As calls went unanswered, and the realization that Valerie had not shown up for 2 full days crystallized, dread settled in. In desperation, her parents took action, reporting their daughter's disappearance to the New Rochelle Police Department. Authorities quickly sprang into action, distributing Valerie's photos and descriptions of her distinctive features throughout the area. Their urgency stemmed from a string of recent attacks on women nearby, incidents that had ended in tragedy. The police wasted no time in investigating Valerie's apartment, where they found no signs of forced entry. Yet they did discover small random specks of blood on the pillowcases, in the toilet, and on the bathroom floor. Initially, these traces were dismissed as remnants from a minor injury. However, the detectives were soon drawn to the unsettling absence of Valerie's phone, iPad, wallet, some clothes, and a small pillow. This suggested a different narrative, one that hinted at a possible flight or an attempt to escape a threatening situation. The investigators theorized that Valerie may have run away, perhaps entangled in something illicit or fleeing from an unknown danger. But her parents vehemently rejected this notion, firmly believing that Valerie would never leave without informing them. Norma recalled her daughter's anxious remarks in the days leading up to her disappearance, where Valerie had expressed a haunting belief that someone wanted her dead. Guilt washed over Norma as she regretted not digging deeper into the source of those fears. The mother speculated that these alarming thoughts might be linked to Valerie's recent breakup. Thus, her ex-boyfriend became the first suspect in their minds. Yet he was soon cleared, actively participating in the search for Valerie and possessing a solid alibi. In the following days, the police, alongside Valerie's family and friends, turned to social media for assistance. The response was overwhelming as individuals rallied to aid in the search for the missing girl. One of Valerie's friends reported a sighting near the New Rochelle train station just days prior. The description painted a vivid picture of Valerie in a dark green coat, black jeans, and black shoes. Further messages surfaced, indicating that Valerie had also been spotted in Manhattan. Others claimed to have encountered a woman resembling her in various bars across the city, each sighting adding another layer of complexity to the mystery of her disappearance. Desperate for answers, Valerie Reyes's family and friends turned to social media, seeking the public's help. The response was swift. One of Valerie's friends recalled a sighting near the New Rochelle train station just days prior. Witnesses described a girl matching Valerie's appearance, noting she wore a dark green coat, black jeans, and black shoes. Another message emerged, claiming Valerie had been spotted in Manhattan. Others chimed in, reporting encounters with a girl resembling Valerie in various bars across the city. The police meticulously examined every lead, only to find that none of the statements held any truth. In a bid to uncover the whereabouts of the young girl, they decided to investigate her bank account activity. What they uncovered was shocking. Money had been withdrawn from Valerie Reyes's debit card at multiple ATMs in New Rochelle, amounting to over $10,000. Driven by urgency, the police quickly requested surveillance footage from the banks at those ATMs. However, piecing together Valerie's movements that morning would take time. In one of the recordings, detectives spotted a girl who matched Valerie's description. The surveillance footage captured her near the bank in the early hours of January 30th. The footage was shown to her mother, Norma, who confirmed that the girl bore a striking resemblance to her daughter. A glimmer of hope ignited in Norma's heart as images of the girl circulated through the media. Authorities urged the public to report any details about Valerie's whereabouts. They also disclosed that she had recently been battling anxiety and depression. Despite numerous appeals for information, the case remained stagnant. A week passed with no leads in the Valerie Reyes case. Then, on February 5, 2019, fate took a grim turn when a group of workers in Greenwich, Connecticut, conducted routine road work in a secluded wooded area. About 10 miles from Valerie's home, one worker noticed a suspicious red-orange suitcase lying a few meters off the main road. This suitcase stood out. It was not the kind of item one would expect to find discarded in the forest. Its appearance suggested that it was not empty. Driven by curiosity, one of the workers approached the suitcase, compelled to see what lay within. The moment he unzipped it, an overwhelming stench wafted out, forcing the other workers to immediately call the police. When the investigative team arrived, they opened the suitcase to reveal a horrifying sight: the body of a young woman. Clad in a shirt and jeans, her shirt was unbuttoned and her shoes were missing. Her knees and ankles were bound, her wrists secured with tape, and layers of duct tape enveloped her mouth and chin. The brutality of the scene was evident. Multiple injuries marred her face and head, suggesting she had endured a savage beating before being placed in the suitcase. Her nose and cheekbones were shattered, and her skull bore signs of fracture. One side of her face was a solid bruise, a testament to the violence inflicted upon her. The body, now in a state of decomposition, indicated that she had been dead for several days. The remains were swiftly sent to the forensic laboratory, where the next day, the cause of death was confirmed as strangulation. To identify the deceased, Valerie's father and older brother were summoned to the morgue. In a show of compassion, the men chose to spare Norma from the horrific sight that awaited them. Though the girl before them was difficult to recognize due to her injuries, the men had no doubts that it was Valerie. Yet, this was only the beginning of the unspeakable horror that the Reyes family would soon face. It was later uncovered that one of the road workers, in a shocking turn of events, a worker stumbled upon the lifeless body of Valerie Reyes, beaten and strangled. As investigators opened the suitcase containing her remains, he began to share the harrowing photograph with acquaintances, recounting the gruesome discovery made in the wooded area near the main road. This individual seemed oblivious to the consequences of his actions, unaware that the image would eventually reach those who loved Valerie. The worst-case scenario unfolded when the photograph nearly made its way to the media, after the worker contacted an editorial office of a news magazine. His offer to publish the crime scene photo prompted the Department of Public Works to take immediate action, placing him on administrative leave as they investigated the incident. Ultimately, they issued a public apology for the thoughtless and insensitive behavior of their employee, a gesture that did little to ease the pain of Valerie's grieving family. Following Valerie's disappearance, police tracked her banking activity, revealing the first cash withdrawal occurred on January 29th, around 5 a.m., just hours after her last conversation with her mother. Surveillance footage from an ATM captured a man wearing black pants and a hooded sweatshirt, concealing his identity while withdrawing the cash. The ATM's cameras also recorded his vehicle, leading detectives to identify the owner through the license plate number. The investigation revealed that the Honda used for the withdrawal had been rented for just 2 days, January 28th and 29th, by none other than Valerie's ex-boyfriend, Javier Enrico Ducilo Rojas, a man she had dated for 3 months before their breakup the previous year. In the days following Valerie's disappearance, Javier continued to make several additional cash withdrawals from her bank card, raising alarming questions about his involvement. Who exactly was Javier Enrico Ducilo Rojas? Born on January 3, 1995, he hailed from Venezuela. Javier held dual citizenship with Portugal and had moved to the United States in 2017, utilizing a special document that permitted residents from a select few countries to remain in the U.S. for 90 days. At that time, Venezuela was experiencing a devastating economic crisis, characterized by hyperinflation and severe shortages of essential goods, such as food and medicine. The crisis fueled a wave of unemployment, forcing nearly 8 million Venezuelans to seek refuge in neighboring countries where they were granted temporary residence. Javier was among those refugees, determined to radically alter the course of his life. As the 90 days of his visa-free stay in the U.S. came to an end, he made the decision to remain in the country illegally. Settling in Flushing, New York, he cycled through various jobs, from working at a cleaning company to becoming a barista, and later, a cook and waiter at a fast food restaurant. Throughout his time in the United States, Javier maintained a low profile, striving to avoid drawing attention to himself. Friends described him as a kind and thoughtful individual, always willing to lend a helping hand. However, everything changed in January 2018 when he unexpectedly fell for a girl he met on a dating site, Valerie Reyes. He went to great lengths to catch her attention. The backdrop of this tragedy was a crisis in Venezuela, where rising unemployment forced nearly 8 million refugees to seek temporary residence in neighboring countries. Among them was Javier Enrico Ducilo Rojas, a young man determined to radically reshape his future. As the 90 days of his visa-free status in the United States came to an end, Javier found himself unwilling to return to the turmoil in his homeland. He chose to remain in the country illegally, settling in Flushing, New York, where he frequently shifted jobs. Initially, he worked for a cleaning company before transitioning to a barista role and later as a cook and waiter in a fast food restaurant. Throughout his time in America, Javier kept a low profile, striving to avoid drawing attention to himself. Friends described him as a kind-hearted and thoughtful individual, always ready to lend a helping hand. However, in January 2018, everything changed when Javier unexpectedly fell for a girl he met on a dating site, Valerie Reyes. He went to great lengths to capture her attention. In the tumultuous landscape of love, Javier was eager to broadcast his emotions to the world. His social media was awash with posts dedicated to Valerie Reyes, and from their very first encounter, he was resolute in his belief that they would never part. Yet the depth of Javier's feelings clashed with Valerie's hesitations. When he proposed that they cohabitate, envisioning a life entwined as a family, it only served to push her further away. Valerie recognized Javier's yearning for a deeper commitment, but she found herself reluctant to bind her future to a man. With ambitious dreams ahead of her, the notion of marriage felt premature. As time passed, the constant presence of Javier became more burdensome than endearing. Determined to reclaim her autonomy, Valerie made the difficult decision to end their relationship. However, Javier was not one to relinquish his hold so easily. His daily barrage of phone calls and text messages became relentless. In a bid for peace, Valerie resorted to blocking him across all messaging platforms and social networks. Norma, Valerie's mother, had her concerns about Javier. She sensed an unsettling need for control in his demeanor, accompanied by a propensity for manipulation that left her wary. In a particularly unsettling turn, Javier invoked the tragic narrative of his mother's battle with cancer to elicit sympathy from Valerie, hoping to draw her back into his orbit. However, the veracity of his claims remained unverified, suggesting he would resort to any means necessary to win her heart once more. Despite his dubious tactics, Javier's persistence bore little fruit. The actual duration of their relationship paled in comparison to the time he spent attempting to reconnect with her through various schemes. His final effort occurred in September 2018. In a desperate bid, he reached out to Valerie, seeking her debit card information. Valerie, Resolute in her decision to distance herself, firmly rejected his advances, dispatching a friend to meet him instead. Following this encounter, Javier vanished from Valerie's life. However, the silence raised questions. Was this a genuine acknowledgement of futility, or merely the calm before an impending storm? It was a question that would soon captivate the detectives assigned to Valerie's case on February 11, 2019. In a dramatic turn of events, Javier was apprehended at his rented apartment in Flushing, New York. During his interrogation, he spun a web of excuses regarding his unauthorized use of Valerie's debit card, initially claiming he had stumbled upon her wallet discarded on a Manhattan street. He asserted that the wallet contained cards and a slip of paper with the debit card's PIN code. Javier insisted he had not seen Valerie in nearly a year, and that he was nowhere near her residence. However, when confronted with evidence of a car rental and its tracked location, his narrative began to crumble. Under mounting pressure, Javier shifted his story, admitting he was near Valerie's home but maintaining he had not encountered her. Yet, the facade was soon shattered when the investigator presented photographs of Valerie's lifeless body inside a suitcase. Though remnants of affection for Valerie lingered in his heart, his story was still far from the truth. Javier claimed that on the evening of January 28th, he had been in contact with her, asserting that he had visited her apartment and engaged in an impassioned reunion, despite their months of separation. According to Javier, their meeting escalated dramatically, resulting in an accident where Valerie fell from the bed, striking her head with such force that she became unresponsive. Their first meeting was charged with excitement, so much so that they didn't notice when they fell off the bed. The fall was catastrophic for Valerie. She struck her head with a force that rendered her unresponsive. In a moment of desperate panic, Javier attempted to revive Valerie, but her lifeless form showed no signs of consciousness. As fear gripped his heart, he resorted to taping her mouth shut, terrified that she might scream at the worst possible moment. With a chilling efficiency, he bound her hands and feet, stowing her away in a suitcase. He then callously discarded it in a nearby wooded area. It was this very act that would eventually lead law enforcement to him, as they collected Javier's DNA, matching it to a sample found on the suitcase handle. The forensic team also discovered traces of his DNA beneath Valerie's fingernails. However, the harrowing evidence began to unravel the narrative Javier provided. Friends and acquaintances of Valerie consistently conveyed to investigators that she had no intention of rekindling her relationship with him, indicating she would never have willingly engaged in sexual relations. Moreover, the forensic examination revealed that Valerie had suffocated inside the suitcase, her face encased in layers of tape. If Javier's account held any truth, the question remained: why did he feel the need to bind a corpse? His actions only deepened the mystery, as he callously withdrew money from her bank accounts, claiming he wanted to be caught on ATM cameras as a misguided form of self-punishment. He suggested that he was waiting for the inevitable retribution for his actions. Yet a crucial question lingered: why not simply confess to the police? Given Valerie's fragile emotional state during her last conversation with her mother, it was improbable she would willingly engage with Javier that night. The injuries on her face told a different story, ones that indicated violence far exceeding a mere fall. These facts systematically dismantled Javier's version of events, yet detectives grappled with the motive that could have compelled him to extinguish the life of the very woman he so desperately craved. As the investigation progressed, a chilling motive began to emerge. Just days before Valerie's disappearance, on January 24, 2019, Javier had sent a text to his new girlfriend, expressing unfounded jealousy over an alleged infidelity. He claimed to have caught Valerie in bed with a neighbor, a ludicrous assertion, given that she would never have voluntarily returned to his home. It was evident that Javier was grappling with the reality of Valerie moving on. Consumed by jealousy and possessiveness, he stalked her, viewing her as his property. The prospect of a new boyfriend ignited a fury within him, leading to a catastrophic confrontation. On the night of January 28, 2019, Javier rented a Honda in Flushing, New York, and made his way to Valerie's apartment in New Rochelle. He arrived in the early hours, parked near her home, and switched his phone to airplane mode. Law enforcement later tracked his phone, revealing it was within a mere 300 feet of Valerie's residence that morning, before its signal vanished. What transpired next remains obscured in darkness. It remains uncertain whether Valerie allowed him entry or if he forced his way in. Soon after, an argument erupted between them, and the confrontation turned deadly. Javier's DNA was later found in swabs taken from Valerie's chest and genitals, further implicating him in the horrific crime. Javier's infatuation morphed into obsession, viewing Valerie as his property. When he sensed a rival, his rage boiled over. Evidence would later reveal the harrowing events of that fateful night. On January 28, 2019, Javier rented a Honda in Flushing, New York, setting his course for Valerie's apartment in New Rochelle. Arriving in the early hours, he parked near her home and switched his phone to airplane mode. Police later traced his phone, confirming he was within 300 feet of Valerie's residence that morning, after which his signal vanished. It remains unclear whether Valerie allowed him inside or if he forced entry. What followed was a violent confrontation. Javier's DNA was discovered on swabs taken from Valerie's chest and genitals, corroborated by samples found beneath her fingernails. In a disturbing turn of events, an argument erupted between Javier Enrico Ducillo Rojas and Valerie Reyes. The investigation revealed that Javier's DNA was discovered in swabs collected from Valerie's chest and genitals. This incriminating evidence was further corroborated by DNA samples found beneath the victim's fingernails, suggesting a violent struggle. Investigators revealed that intimate contact and sexual intercourse occurred between Valerie Reyes and Javier Enrique Ducillo Rojas. However, it became evident that this encounter lacked mutual consent. Javier's claims of consent were undermined by the evidence suggesting that Valerie fought back fiercely, leading to a violent struggle. In the aftermath of their confrontation, Valerie sustained severe injuries, including a head trauma, numerous bruises across her face, and a fractured nose. As she succumbed to the overwhelming pain and lost consciousness, Javier resorted to a chilling act. He wrapped her mouth and chin in several layers of tape, sealing her fate. In a shocking twist of betrayal, Javier bound Valerie's hands and legs before stowing her away inside a red-orange suitcase. This was not just any suitcase. It was one they had purchased together for a hopeful trip at the beginning of their relationship. At this moment, Valerie was still alive, trapped and terrified. Javier's decision to eliminate her stemmed from rejection. As Valerie struggled for breath, the suffocating layers of tape around her mouth and chin proved lethal, exacerbated by her broken nose, rendering her unable to inhale. After disposing of the suitcase in the trunk of a rented car, Javier returned to Valerie's apartment. He meticulously cleaned the scene, leaving behind minimal evidence, which would later baffle the police as they searched for clues. In a calculated move, Javier unlocked Valerie's phone using her fingerprint, combing through her messages to find out who she had been in contact with since their breakup. He was particularly interested in acquiring her banking information, revealing his malicious intent. As Javier drove toward Greenwich, Connecticut, Valerie remained trapped, deprived of oxygen, unable to fight back any longer. He found a secluded stretch of highway, hidden by trees, where he callously discarded the suitcase, unaware if Valerie was alive or dead. On his return trip, he exploited her phone to access her bank accounts, further showcasing his disregard for her life. After emptying her accounts, he disposed of the phone by hurling it off a bridge into a river. He then stopped at multiple ATMs, withdrawing cash with no thought for the horror he had just inflicted. Along with Valerie's phone, he took her iPad and even one of her pillows, a stark reminder of the life they once shared. In a chilling display of indifference, Javier later exchanged the iPad for a new computer monitor, underlining his lack of remorse following the crime. On February 12, 2019, Javier Enrique Ducillo Rojas was charged with kidnapping resulting in death, facing the dire consequences of either the death penalty or life imprisonment. The path to trial would not be swift. Javier's defense sought to cast him as a victim of circumstances, arguing that he had acted out of jealousy and that this crime was a tragic first for him. His lawyers emphasized his previously clean record and the hardships he faced as a refugee from Venezuela, painting a picture of a man driven to desperation. They highlighted his struggles with depression and substance abuse following his escape from a crumbling society. Javier portrayed himself as a broken man, expressing genuine regret for his actions. Fortunately for him, a plea agreement was reached, and on February 5, 2020, he pled guilty to the kidnapping of Valerie Reyes and the subsequent actions that led to her tragic death. In court, Javier expressed his deep remorse, admitting he would never forgive himself for his heinous actions. He refrained from asking for forgiveness from Valerie's grieving family, fully aware that he was undeserving of their compassion. As the courtroom echoed with silence, Valerie's mother, Norma, awaited the moment for justice to be served. During the court proceedings, Javier expressed profound remorse, stating he would never forgive himself for his heinous actions. He lacked the courage to seek forgiveness from the Reyes family, fully aware that he did not deserve it. When Valerie's mother, Norma, confronted him, as Valerie Reyes's mother took the floor, her voice trembling with grief, she expressed the profound pain of losing her daughter in her prime. In a haunting display of emotion, Javier Enrique Docil Rojas, seated in the defendant's dock, could no longer contain his tears, quietly sobbing as the weight of his actions bore down upon him. On September 23, 2021, the court delivered its verdict. Javier Enrique Docil Rojas was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the heinous crime of kidnapping resulting in death. Due to his illegal status in the United States, he would face deportation back to Venezuela once his prison term concluded. Valerie Reyes was a beacon of joy and happiness to everyone fortunate enough to know her. Her tragic death ignited a wave of outrage throughout her community. In her brief life, she had encountered jealousy and cruelty, shadows that ultimately contributed to her untimely demise. The actions driven by greed and malice were not mere accidents. They were premeditated acts, steeped in emotion yet calculated with chilling precision. Javier had harbored intentions of harm long before he stepped foot into Valerie's apartment. His decision to steal from the very person whose life he had extinguished showcased his profound lack of remorse. The tears shed in the defendant's dock were nothing more than a facade, a calculated attempt at manipulation. This marks the grim conclusion of a tragic tale. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. I'm Jeremy, and I'll see you soon. Dial.